Hi guys, you're here with Black Excellence Bristol and we're acknowledging achievements and aspirations. I'm here with the very talented Sophia Harari. How are you doing today?
Yeah, all
You
right.
good, yeah?
How are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm absolutely buzzing, to be honest. I'm feeling really excited for this one.
Yeah.
I've had you on the books for a long time to do this interview, so I'm glad we've finally got to that point. So my introduction to you was actually at the Jamaican Independence Day, if you remember.
Yeah.
Actually, no, tell a lie. I saw you sing at Eastwood Park before that, the protest.
Yeah.
And that was really beautiful. That was really moving. If you don't know, Sophia is an amazing singer. You also do poetry as well, and you do physical like artwork as well, don't you?
Yeah, well, more like curating exhibitions.
Okay.
Not as much like doing the work, more like
Saying what's good and what's not.
making sure it looks good and the space feels comfortable and holistic.
Yeah. So you can tell us a bit more about like curating, because I keep hearing that word, but I don't really know what it meant. I thought it meant like you choose like what art is on exhibition, but
Yeah, I think it's just like, say you had a room and 5 pieces of work, it's just making sure that the journey through that space makes you engage with the story of the work that's being showed. So it's just, yeah, like helping people connect to the work in a way that feels useful and educational and also just feels nice.
yeah.
I work at Bristol Beacon, so mostly like assisting with like producing and curating music events, but in that we also have, like, we did an event a few weeks ago which was like visual art, film, spoken word and music, so just like bringing different types of like art forms into like a music venue space and just like pushing the boat out and experimenting with what we can do with that space.
So out of the kind of work you produce, would you say, is it mainly singing or mainly poetry or a bit of a mixture?
Mixture, just whatever feels right in the moment, I guess. Like sometimes I like to write poems, and sometimes, especially, I'll just be like out on a night out or like at a party, and then a track will come on and I'll just be like writing lyrics. Just like writing until the song finishes. I'm just like, right, I can dance now. So it just depends on what space I'm in and like who I'm around and what I'm inspired by. But yeah, any form of writing really, or just creativity that feels right to me in that time.
And sort of like, what kind of like age did you realise that you had like such an amazing voice and that you wanted to like, you wanted to like start singing and stuff?
What time did you realise you were a star? I don't think it's ever like sunk in that that's something. It's just something that I do and people engage with it positively, so I keep doing it. It's never been like a moment where I'm like, wow, this is what I do. It's just like the way that my journey has taken me and the way that like the source has led me through the world and navigating the world, it just means that these opportunities arise and I just like walk into them, and if it feels comfortable I'll stay there, and if it doesn't then I take a step back. So there have been times in my life where, especially a few years ago, I was like, I don't want to do music anymore, it doesn't feel right, so I took a step back and then got into poetry a bit more and then got into music again, and just like listening to myself and just being true to what feels right and like trusting in my instinct. But it's never been like a moment where I'm like, this is what I'm gonna do. There was one time when I was in uni, I was singing in the shower, my housemates were like, wow, you're good. I was like, all right. And that was like just before my first gig, so maybe that was some affirmation set me on the right path.
And so you're currently based in Bristol, but you know, as we can tell from your accent, you sound like you're from up north. Whereabouts are you from, and how did you end up in Bristol?
I'm from Manchester, and then I went to uni in Brighton. Met someone in Brighton who was from Bristol, and I didn't want to go back home after uni. I went back to my mum's for like 2 weeks. I'm the eldest of 7. It was just like screaming children and like getting people up for school, and I was like, I'm out. So then just came to Bristol, and then it just fit. I just fit into like the scenes that I was interested in, and then now this is my home. As I had the same thing with someone else we've interviewed, Josie. And she's not actually from Bristol, but then like I said to her, I was like, you know, I wouldn't even know because there is like a sort of Bristol vibe, particularly like, you know, in the artistic scene here, and I feel like you either are with that vibe and you fit in, or a lot of people, it's a bit like sink or swim, you know what I mean? There's people who fit in with that vibe
and are basically like a Bristol native, like I think someone like you, I would say you fit that vibe. And like, you know, if you didn't have the accent, I wouldn't even have known you went from Bristol. You know what I mean?
I'll change it. I'll cut it. I'll drop it in a second. Next clip.
And so yeah, like I said before, my first introduction to you was at the protest last year, the All Black Lives protest last year, and you spoke at, was it about 2 of them, and performed some music and poetry. Oh no, yeah, performed music at one of them and poetry at another. How was that for you to like get up on stage in front of all those people and just like speak about your experiences? Because it was really moving for me. And I know it was very emotional for you as well. So you just tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I was just feeling a lot at the time, and the only way that I could really express it in like a tangible way was through writing. So a lot of the things that I wrote them for me, and then just to be in a space where I felt so like seen and heard by all the people that were there, it felt comfortable to then share that. But it was scary. Every time I've got up on stage at like a All Black Lives protest, my knees have been knocking, my hands have been shaking. Like if I go on like stage and I'm singing, like I'm calm because I know what the outcome is going to be. I know how largely how people are going to engage with it, but because it was so personal and it was so real to so many people that were in that space, it was just quite scary. But I had so many conversations with people after about the similarities in experience and that like shared trauma of black people at that time, that it felt worth the fear, just to be able to have a dialogue, like a really honest dialogue with people about our trauma. So yeah, it was scary, but definitely worthwhile.
Yeah, I know what you mean, because I spoke at a few of them as well, and I felt like beforehand I'd feel like so nervous, but the feeling afterward of just like I got out these feelings that had been trapped inside me for so long, and just like the way the crowd responds to it, and it just feels so validating, like you said, to finally feel like heard, you know what I mean? Like, because I feel like a lot of black people, we do suffer in silence, and those protests really gave us like a platform to speak our minds really, and just kind of like explore those emotions and those feelings, and that was like really powerful for me as well. Definitely I relate to that 100%. How have you found, like, you know, being in Bristol and like away from a lot of your family? Like, is it hard to like still feel like connected to your roots and stuff, like your culture?
I FaceTime my siblings every day.
Yeah.
So like I have quite a close relationship with them. I feel like culturally, the distance that I feel from like my heritage now have been the distance that I felt even when I was in Manchester, just because of being British. Like it means that there's a space between myself and my heritage, because there's a space between British culture and colonialism and like the power structures in play, and Caribbean culture, Jamaican culture, and the oppression of Jamaican people by Britain. So there is a distance there, but I don't think it's because of my proximity to my family. I think it's because of the relationship between Britain and Jamaica.
Yeah.
More so.
Yeah. So you're Jamaican heritage and you're Moroccan as well?
Moroccan,
yeah. And I remember we spoke at the Jamaican Independence Day, and you were saying like you've not really been that welcomed or that accepted when you've been in Morocco.
Yeah.
Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely.
It's just like double layered. Like if I'm just walking around the street where my mum's from, I don't look Moroccan, I just look black. And then as soon as I speak, then I'm English.
Yeah.
And then that's even worse.
Yeah.
Like, being black is bad, but being English is worse.
Yeah.
Like, it's peak. But yeah, so it's just like this double barrier of, my mother's culture, which I want to claim as my own, but I feel some distance from it because I've not been accepted as that.
Yeah. Did your mum speak Arabic as well?
Yeah, like she grew
Yeah.
up there.
She
Like
grew up there,
that's
yeah.
she only moved
Yeah.
to England when she got married. So
Oh,
like
wow, yeah.
all my aunties and uncles, cousins, they're all in Morocco and
Yeah.
still.
And how do they like not treat you, but like how is it with them? Is it just more so the general people you see on the street in Morocco, but you don't feel accepted by, or is it within the family as well?
I think there is an acceptance just because there's love there, but there still feels like a distance. Just from the fact that there's an unfamiliarity with my existence and their existence, and distance again from like Britishness, and like I've got cousins as well that live in France, I have an auntie that lives in Spain, and there's like this European distance, and then having sort of blackness as part of my identity as well is just another layer of distance. Like I remember I had like long twists in with extensions, and then I went to a wedding, and my auntie tried to like do like a hairstyle that Moroccan women do at weddings. So she tried to like morph my hair into this shape that it couldn't fit into, and I looked ridiculous. And they were like, "Wow, you look so beautiful! Like you look so Moroccan." And like they did my makeup and like that wedding makeup and obviously the only powder they had was like white powder.
No.
So it was just like there wasn't that accommodate, because it was just like a local salon, and no one there is my complexion. So it was just it wasn't like an intentional disrespect to me, but it was a clear
It's a bit of a clash of culture, I guess, isn't it?
like there was just something not in line, and it wasn't meant to be hurtful, but being in that space and being aware that the way that I exist as a Moroccan woman doesn't align with the way that they understand a Moroccan woman to be was like quite troubling to realise, because I've always like felt of like, I feel a bit uncomfortable here and I don't know why, and then just being able to have these very visceral experiences that made it clear as to why I felt some discomfort in those spaces.
I like to ask everyone about sort of their achievements so far, really, because that's kind of what sort of inspired the project, really, was initially about achievement and stuff, but also like, you know, the journey of getting to this point and being who you are and being comfortable in your own skin. I see that as an achievement and excellence within itself. So I like to focus on a bit about people's background, their history, and their kind of like their journey through to this point now. But just to reflect, what's something you've like, I guess, achieved in any capacity, whether it's, you know, mental, physical, emotional, something you're really proud of that's like happened across your journey? You can take a minute to think about that.
I think I will. I was given like a platform and a space working at Bristol Beacon to be able to put on events that I wanted to put on, and being able to put on like different collectives, so like the Shiku Collective and Fruit Machine, people that like groups that are led by like people of colour and are community based, and being able to just hold a space for them, and then being able to show loads of different artists and musicians, and just like allowing this community to be let into a space that traditionally is not for them. I think that was like really rewarding because of my relationship with the people that put on the event, and because it's quite intimate relationships, it meant that I could also share my work and where I was at that point. So just having a space where like I've got a platform, having a space where I can let people in, and then them letting me in as well. It was just like a really nice transaction of like creativity and like community, and just to know that I was like a part of that was really rewarding, and it just makes me want to do more in the future as well.
And speaking of like Bristol Beacon, obviously that was formerly known as Colston Hall, and you know, living in Bristol my whole life, that was always what we knew it as, you know. So, and I performed there a few times back when I was younger, doing stages and stuff like that. But yeah. So how is it there? Like, does it still feel like a very colonized Eurocentric space, or do you feel with the name change is also reflected with internal workings there?
I'd never been.
No.
I'd never been until I worked there. The first gig I went to was my own gig.
Really?
Yeah.
And that was the one a couple of weeks ago?
Yeah, a few weeks ago.
Oh,
That
okay.
was the first event I've been to there. I mean, I'd walked past when people were doing like sound checks.
Yeah.
No, it was actually multi-track, which is like the youth program or like the young people program where they support young artists. That was the first event I went. So the whole time it was Colston Hall, I'd never stepped into it. If it was called Colston Hall, I wouldn't have applied for the job.
Really?
Yeah. But so I applied for the job and got speaking, and like the ethos of like my managers and line managers just really aligned with what I wanted. And the way that my experience, I found it very, not only welcoming, but they just listen to me. And I've never, maybe it's because I've not had like a real job before. I've just had like rubbish like admin jobs or like hospitality jobs, but I speak and they're like, okay, like your point is valid. Like how are we going to make that happen? So, because I know from an external perspective, I know what the organisation stood for as Colston Hall, but I don't really know what the inside was like at that point. All I know is that now it just seems like quite a healthy organisation who know that change needs to happen and they're ready for it and they've got the resources to make that change happen. So yeah, they're under a lot of scrutiny and they're aware of that, so they listen to what people want or what people don't want. So I'm finding it all right. And I might be biased as well, like I don't know, but yeah.
Well, this is the thing, you know, you experience it firsthand because they do have a bit of a reputation of being like more of a white dominated space and receiving a lot of funding from Bristol Council, which seem to be very interconnected. But I mean, you know, you're on the inside and you've had a good experience as a black woman working there. You feel like you've been validated in your experience and they are putting on shows that are more Afrocentric.
I think as well, like the opportunities that I've had, so I came with, it's like a Jerwood Fellowship, my role there. So it's like a year program to like get young people into the arts. And basically my first few weeks were like, what do you care about? Like, what are you passionate about? Like, what do you want to focus on? And I was like, black people, queer people, young people. And they're like, all right, well, we'll focus on that then. And because of that, like, I have chosen that as my interest. That's what I've been focusing on in that organisation. And all the conversations I've been having have been about that. And they're like, okay, so do you want black people in the space? How do we do that? How do we make that happen? So it's been, and I've got the resources then to do it. That's why I put on the events that I put on, because it's like, we'll put on an event, who do you want to come? And I tell them and they help me make it happen. So yeah, from my perspective, I've chosen for that to be like a priority at Beacon. And because I've chosen that to be a priority, they've now made it a priority. Yeah,
that's great because you're clearly making change within the space.
Lastly,
one thing I wanted to ask you is what's one of your like goals for the future, whether that's, you know, near future or like long term, just something you wish to achieve in your time on this earth?
Wow.
In any capacity as well, you know, whether it's music or just in your own personal development, you know, anything like that.
I think I want to write a screenplay.
Wow,
yeah. Don't know why. I just do. I want to write something and see it on telly.
That is sick though. That would be sick.
So that's something, and it's been something that I've been thinking about for ages, and then this week I've told about 5 people, so now it's got to happen. So yeah, I'm trying to tell as many people as possible, so I'm putting the pressure on myself to make it work. But I hear so many interesting stories, and like I know that the life that I have been gifted is so special and so particular. My experience is so particular that it would just be interesting to see how I can use my experiences and the experiences of people around me to make a piece of art that is consumable to more people. Because right now it's like I write a poem, and if you don't like poetry, you're not going to listen to it. But like everyone likes telly. Do you know what I mean?
That's true.
So just trying to make the things that I write, because what I write about is so consistent, like poetry, music, stories, whatever, articles. It's such a consistent theme. So just to expand that into like a new realm of creativity and entertainment. I think that's something that I want. I can see it happen as well. So you heard it here right first. You know, we've got a new screenplay coming out 2022. Watch that. Thank you so much for coming through. Really appreciate it, and that was a really good interview. Love that. Thank you.